diva demands, and peeing on seats. Why flight attendants hate working in business class more than economy. Whether it's asking you to separate their mixed nuts or sending back a drink because the ice cube is too large, premium passengers are the worst behaved, according to cabin crew. It was during training for his new job as a flight attendant in a business class cabin that Brad realized what he was in for. Each instructor shared anecdotes about their horror stories, he says. The worst was an obese man who needed to pee but couldn't fit in the lavatory and threatened to pee on his seat. The crew had to hold up blankets in the galley, and he took his trousers off and peed into a cup. As Brad, who works for a major U.S. airline flying both domestic and international, would soon come to realize, working up front isn't the easy ride you'd assume. A lot of flight attendants don't like working in first because it's more work and the passengers tend to be more needy than in economy, he says. A flight attendant on another U.S. airline, who we'll call Pamela, now works in first class after over a decade in economy. She agrees with Brad. People feel more entitled, she told The Independent. Soon after his training, Brad was collecting his own anecdotes. General rudeness is an everyday occurrence. There are too many times to count where people get on board and just hand me coats and say, seat 3E, and I'll take a vodka cranberry, he says. That sort of brusqueness is also common among British business class passengers flying the New York to London route, Brad adds. He says they tell him, I am not to talk to them, just give them the meal of their choice and keep their glass filled anytime it gets low. But Brad, who has been a flight attendant for 6 months, says business class passengers on international flights are generally better behaved than domestic U.S. passengers. The real horrors, he says, pop up on certain short-haul routes, New York to LA, JFK to Port-au-Prince, and almost any New York City, Florida flight. JFK to Miami, he says, is notorious among flight attendants. Everyone thinks they're the most important person in the world. I once had a 40-something male passenger who said he was a picky eater and asked me to remove the almonds from his mixed nuts, the shaved parmesan from his salad, and the cilantro from his tabbouleh. But sometimes attitudes can be more sinister. Flying to Dallas one day, I had a middle-aged couple where the man wouldn't look at me, talk to me, or acknowledge me because he didn't like gay people, Dan told The Independent. I was taking orders and he wasn't answering, and then he said, I prefer not to interact with your kind, and told his wife that he wanted the pasta and a Diet Dr. Pepper. So why work in business class? For the money. Flight attendants are paid more to be the lead, and the lead works up front, says Brad. Most of my colleagues hate working first or business because the passengers are high maintenance, but I like the extra pay, he says. And in my old line of work, which was politics, my bosses were just as insane, so it's not too much of a difference. That's not to say all premium passengers are bad eggs. Some check if he's okay after witnessing him being subjected to homophobia or abuse. And of course, economy passengers, the rats in the back as Pamela called them, can be just as badly behaved. One man recently accosted Brad and asked him for compensation for the fact that his neighbor was putting his elbow on their shared armrest. That, he says, is the only time he's come close to cracking. But there is hope. Pamela says the premium passengers often acknowledge their bad behavior. They think that flight attendants have some superpower to fix everything from TV to seats to the fact that they're just having a bad day, she says. I've learned to just always smile and nod, knowing that once they've got out all their drama, they settle down and start to turn around and realize what an ass they've been. Rarely do they apologize, but on most of my flights they exit with a thank you, you were so nice. Air travel makes people crazy and very bold, says Brad, but I do this because I love it. Let's see how he feels after a decade in the job.